A man who started life, his professional sporting life, as a rower, taking in a world championship gold medal, competing at the Olympics as one of the very, very best rowers in the world. He then transitioned to cycling and was a professional cyclist taking part in grand tours all over the planet, the hardest cycling races in the world. He then decided, perhaps I've had enough for now of suffering. I'm going to put my feet up for 6 years. Before that break only fired him up to say, what is the hardest, most ludicrous thing I can do to myself? How can I push myself harder than I ever have before? Oh, I know. I can do triathlon, where they run, they cycle, and they swim. And on top of that, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go back to the INEOS Grenadiers and be teammates with Tom Pidcock and everyone else and be a professional cyclist too. That's who we're talking to.
Thanks for joining us, Cam. I definitely want to say, first things first, how was the Ironman World Championships yesterday?
Yeah, it was a long, hot day in the sun down here in Nice. So, and you sort of wake up, depending on how you perform, it sort of dictates a lot of the aches and the pains and things that you feel, and then obviously the emotions. Obviously, if you do really well, nothing seems to hurt. You feel like you could go and do it again. And if you got your teeth kicked in, which I kind of did yesterday, you kind of feel like you got your teeth kicked in. So I guess it's not much different to winning a downhill World Cup or crashing out.
Right.
Pretty similar.
A bit more physical effort. And, definitely a bit more physical effort involved in winning an Ironman. I mean, we were on the bikes for about 3 or 4 minutes. So I don't know if we can compare that. But yeah.
And so how did you do?
Yeah, I was 14, which, it was... I guess I've been now, that would have been so I've been 17th, 9th, 5th, 11th, 4th, so 5th time. I've never been outside the top 20, but in that time, I guess when I came in, the level of the sport back in 2017 wasn't, it was obviously a high level, but not certainly like it is now. The COVID sort of boom of everything sport related has sort of, I wouldn't say that the highest level of the sport has sort of changed much. The best guys are kind of similar type guys, and the standard to win hasn't changed a lot, but there's just more in that next group. And if you get it wrong, instead of being 5th, you're 14th, and that's sort of the big thing. So there's a lot of intensity there. When things start going wrong, someone's snapping at your heels. It's not like you can say, oh, shoot, I'll just take 10K to gather my marbles here and we'll get back to work. Next thing, 5 guys have zigged past you and you're dealing with the demoralization of that, plus the fact that you feel like crap. And,
I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because is anything but a world championship a disappointment at this point?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, being 5th was my best, and obviously the next thing is, the podium, or in reality, it's only about being world champion, isn't it? I mean, I've actually won one in rowing, and that's something I'm proud of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't really think about the placing, I guess, after that. It's like, it's the one day, isn't it, the year that being the winner is all that really counts. That's the thing that'll stay in the history books forever. So, and that's, I guess, why it's sort of disappointing, because I certainly didn't race to try to get my best result, as far as trying to get 14th and maybe get a 10th or an 8th. I went out there trying to win, and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And in the end, I was, exposed and got pummeled at the finish on the run. So by a bunch of guys. So, but hey, it's championship day. I mean, you got to go for it, don't you? It's all or nothing.
For sure. I mean, can you talk us through a little bit about how it went? Maybe a little play-by-play. We definitely want to. Rob and I are not endurance athletes.
No, that's right. Tell us about, which is the discipline that suits you the best, the distances, which one you find harder. Because you come from rowing, right? As you said, you had a World Championship gold.
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't lead ideally into running, cycling, or swimming. Just saying.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with swimming, that was sort of the hardest thing, because I obviously did cycling in between, the World Tour level, those two sports. So, but the memory from rowing kind of does come back a bit in swimming when I'm trying to learn to swim at that level. I mean, these guys are quite world class at swimming, and swimming is the interesting one, because it's kind of the only time where racing. There's a starting line. It's 50 minutes. It's kind of pretty much at threshold, that first 50 minutes, and then once you get on the bike, it kind of settles down a bit. People kind of have to start people can push the pace. Like someone like myself is always going to try and do that and make the race hard.
Right.
And others make their decision. Do we try to follow or do we ride at our pace knowing that we can then run well? Whereas I just sort of go for it and just cross my fingers that I'll be able to run afterwards. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And, but yeah, so basically the rowing is a little bit helpful there. And particularly yesterday, often we start on the beach. So it's a run into the water, which being Australian is kind of good. We grow up on the beach, so you're used to that. So I'm generally pretty good at that part anyway. But the water starts are actually also, unfortunately, that's one part I am good at, because you remember the concept of rowing, the importance of moving the boat those first few strokes. If you just rip it, you just waste those strokes and the boat doesn't really go anywhere. So having the right technique there. So this was a deep water start and you sort of, it's pretty physical. You're kind of jostling, everyone's trying to get close to the best swimmers because, drafting and swimming is huge. I mean, it's no different than on the bike. It could be 30% type thing, saving energy. It's massive. It's absolutely unbelievable how much. And unfortunately, I found that out the hard way yesterday during the swim.
And so what happens if you lose it, like lose a leg or whatever? Like, I know about it in bikes, like lose a tire, but.
And I guess they drag the water in the right direction, do they? That's what it is. It's like.
Exactly. It's sort of like slipstreaming. Yeah. So the goal is to either swim directly behind the feet. Almost the best thing, which is what I try and do, is swim. You're not really swimming properly. You're sort of doggy paddling either side of their feet.
So
you sort of just literally.
I feel like that's my kind of
getting
thing.
dragged through the water,
doggy paddle.
By them. Like you're literally, like this, and the feet are like this close to your nose. So you're just trying to not get kicked in the face. And obviously, if they know you're doing that, they flick their feet up, because as you would, because you don't want someone following you.
Do you guys get hit a lot, like kicked a lot, and?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's arms and stuff going everywhere. Unfortunately, I've never copped any massive hits to the face. I've copped some hits to the back of the head. But, yeah, the other way is swim on their hip. You swim beside them and sort of drag off their hip because that's sort of pushing water. So you're kind of getting sort of pushed along and where it sort of the water starts to displace. And that's really annoying to the person that you're doing it to because you're kind of holding them up. You're kind of slowing them down.
Really?
So I always try and avoid people doing that to me, even though I'm there fighting to like swim on someone's feet, but then some bozo's right beside me trying to pull me off them basically. And I'm like, mate, I'm flat out trying to stay here and you're going to get us both dropped.
Right.
And so, but in the end, I'm the one sniveling as well. So, you got to keep reminding yourself, wait a minute, you bellend, you're the one trying to follow this other bloke. Like this guy can do whatever he wants. And, so anyway, that's sort of as the sports progress, the swimmers become very decisive. There's a lot. The cycling is probably the biggest thing that's changed since my time in the sport, and without sounding like a douche, a lot to do with that because when I came in, I lowered the Kona bike course record, for example, by around 10 minutes,
which is
insane. I couldn't run
10 minutes.
Yeah, well, I wasn't a good runner. Yeah, at that point, this is back in 2018. And so the good runners would sort of let me go and give me 10 minutes, knowing that they could run 15 minutes quicker and run me down.
Sure.
But then I started to learn to run in 2019. So then all of a sudden they all rocked up and they could all ride close to my speed and still run that fast. So I was still back. And the sports kind of continued to evolve like that. So I guess I kind of missed my window to, take advantage of it. I probably showed a bit too much in those days.
Yeah.
So now I've got to figure out another way. So anyway, now the swimmers become very decisive because there's a lot of strong guys. So you get a big pack out of the water that are strong on the bike also. And just that moving mass at the front of the race, it just moves really quickly. And so the swim's really crucial. So, I was in a perfect spot. I was on feet. I literally swimming on top of them and just following the exact guys that I needed to follow, the guys that ended up second and third. The guy that won, he's amazing at everything. He was just in the front group, just a few seconds ahead. I wasn't too worried about him. I was more worried about this group that I could hold on to. And 2.5K in, there was an acceleration. Some things just happen and I'm not in control of what's going on. So I've just got to try and keep following. And I just started to lose the feet. And luckily I knew there was a few behind me and they sort of jumped around me and I kind of sniveled to grab onto their feet for a bit and held on for a bit. And then started to drop, and then the next guy came around me, and then boom, and then all of a sudden they're gone. It's just like on a bike.
Right,
like,
I was gonna say that
when
it's so it seems so similar to
crazy.
like a world tour race, or like we would see.
It's identical. Like in a crosswind, you see the guy in the gutter and he's hanging on, and then boom, he's out the back and bleeding time. And in that last 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters, maybe I probably lost a minute and a half, like a significant amount of time to that group. Yeah, and in some ways it was good because I was able to then grab my breath, sort of take it a bit easier. Get ready for the ride, because I'm like, right, I'm going to have to ride and run quicker than I've ever run, better than I've ever done it before now to try and win this thing. But what ended up happening was, the guy that won, he was in that front group. He sort of stayed at that distance ahead for a long time, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. And then the other guy was in the middle, that was sort of the other stronger guy on the bike. And he stayed a minute and a half ahead of me. And we kind of just moved through the whole bike course like that. Sure. And there was one other guy sort of dangled in between. So by the time I got off the bike, I was fourth and still kind of within a shot more so of the podium. The guy in the lead in the last part of, I've been in the lead of that race before, and there's, the last part of that race, I don't know what happens, but you just seem to go faster. It's just the energy of the World Championships.
Right.
You just all of a sudden just disappear up the road. And when you're that guy, you're like, oh, this is awesome, because I feel great. And I'm taking minutes out of these fools. But when you're the one at the back and you see the time board going up and you're still going, you're just like, oh, this sucks. But anyway, started the run in a pretty, and back to that, the course was for an Ironman, was quite technical here in Nice. We went up around Col de Vence in that area. And so we had about 2,500 meters of climbing, and it was basically a big climb, a bit of a plateau, and a bit of rolling, and then quite a long descent, 40, 50K. And I spend a lot of time riding with Tom in Andorra, Peacock, and I mean, every descent, it's just like full gas. Like he might dawdle up, but then every time it comes to going downhill, it's just boom. So inadvertently, my skills have improved.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to rail this descent. And I was in the bars and I thought I knew it all really well. And not only knows how or why, but I forgot a corner. And it was either try to make it and wash out, or scrub as much speed off, hit the bank, and just hope that I don't break myself or the bike. So I did. I went for that option, hit the bank, catapulted over the bars, ended up the thing, so I got dirt and crap all over me. But remarkably, I just passed the guy in fifth, and he must have blown hard, so he didn't catch me. I got back. I came. Obviously, you stand up, check if anything's broken. Cyclist style. Quickly jump back on the bike. The chain was off, but that was it. And off I went and kept going on the descent. And I was fine. I mean, there's barely a scratch on me. I mean, it was. I was definitely like 60k an hour when I hit this bank.
No way! Were you really that fast?
Yeah, it seems insane.
Yeah. I just completely missed the corner, and the disc wheel and everything. I thought for sure something was broken. It was just remarkable. Like I was just so lucky. And anyway, down the descent, got off the bike. I was in fourth and sort of only a minute or so behind second and third. The guy in the front, as I said, had disappeared. So I started the run, flat out to try and stay there, try and fight for that podium, top 5 type thing. And I got the swim, the sniveling, the being the smart guy, swimming on top of the feet, come back to bite me on the butt a bit, quite literally. And I guess I must have just been swallowing a lot of salt water, because I was literally like head out of the water, and people they're kicking and there's water going everywhere like a speedboat propeller. And I was probably just copping, heaps of water in my mouth. And as soon as I started running, I kind of felt it in the first 10K, but I was like, it should be fine. I took some Imodium. I have that always as emergency. But yeah, after you have to, because this can happen. Wow. And then after like 15K, I just had, luckily there happened to be, a portage on pretty much in proximity. And gosh, as I came out, the guy that was in fifth came past, and then, I tried to get myself together, but that was sort of the beginning of the end. I had to stop again, and you obviously struggle to keep,
Didn't imagine it, having to deal with that at a World Championship.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, well, the race just kind of deteriorated pretty well from there. I went from fourth back to ultimately 14th,
I'm feeling rough with
25K like that is a long way.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, on the bike, you can probably kind of deal with it because you can roll a bit, but when you're running, and not only that, but the crowd, and you're still up there. Like, I was still in the top 10 forever and just hurting like hell, and everyone's, go Cam, you do it. You're like, okay, I'll try. You just can't. And you're trying to squeeze your cheeks together at the same time and just smile. Yeah. So
Man,
Cam, it just didn't pan out so well for me this time.
This is so wild because I mean, what you just described is probably about 3 months of like my life. You know what I mean? Like swimming, like endurance sports in general. What drew you to endurance sports in the first place? I mean, I definitely want to get into cycling and your you racing on the world tour, but like, what is it about endurance sports that motivates you?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, that's a really interesting question because ever since when I was rowing, like I remember when I was 16, 17, like, first aiming to get into junior worlds, for example, and I do these things called 6-hour Saturdays, and we'd row in the mornings. You always row on a Saturday, on the weekend. It'd always be the bigger, longer row. When you're a kid, it might be an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Then I'd go do weights, so that might be another hour or so, and then maybe you get on the rowing machine for an hour, and then I'd do the rest on the bike. Or sometimes I'd just get on the bike for a few hours. And then it became, when I was 18, 19, moving into the more, under 23 elite category, it became 8-hour Saturdays, and I just like add a bit of combination of different activities, and I just loved it. Like I've always had Sunday off, I always like to have 1 day a week off. I was at the Institute of Sport when I had my best sort of years rowing, and that was the rule. Like they literally lock on Sundays, they just lock the place down. Like you cannot access any sporting equipment. Yeah, they just you can't go in. Like it's off. And they put on the eggs and bacon, and Nutella comes out in the kit dining hall. It's like a day of rest. Like just enjoy yourselves, relax, because you got another week of training next week, and so I've always sort of adopted that approach. So I do this big day to sort of finish that, finish the week, and then you'd have your rest day, and I used to, didn't matter how ruined I'd get, you'd bonk. Pretty much, get hunger flat every time, and no knowledge of,
if you don't bonk,
as a rower,
like
you got no knowledge of, exactly. Like as a rower, you got no knowledge of your nutrition for anything more than 6 minutes. And so, I just loved it. I used to remember I had a smile on my face all the time. And I guess that was when I thought about, how cool would it be to do cycling, which ultimately, I evolved, ended up switching to. And then I guess Ironman was like a natural progression of that because it's literally 8 hours of doing a few different activities,
Yeah.
So it's kind of a sport made for me, I guess.
And rowing leads, do you use the same muscles in rowing and cycling? Is that how you could transition from? Because I live in Henley-on-Thames, which you probably know is a bit of a rowing town. And I used to see the Olympic four of Redgrave and Pinsent and that. They were always out on the road bikes around me. They did do a lot of cycling, I noticed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always been a big part of the cross training for rowing. Yeah. So I guess it's non-weight bearing, as well, like rowing is. So there's that element to it. But, rowing, you can't really spend more than an hour or two in a boat. It's a long time to be sitting on your butt in a boat and your hands get ripped up and, all that. And so the smarter rowers have always found other, the Nordic guys would to do a lot of cross-country skiing or any of these activities where they could build that big endurance base. And most obviously, choose cycling. So I think it's, I wouldn't say it's like a master plan of that, like it's a perfect crossover. It just sort of is that, it's an activity you can do that complements rowing. Yeah. And then some of us end up then, taking it a bit of a step further and going, I actually want to race on that as well, or instead, or whatever. And that's kind of how that kind of goes. But it's more like that weight bearing thing, I think, and the ability that, you could go running, but it's kind of like rowing. I mean, you can, if you're running for 1 or 2 hours or 3 hours like I did yesterday, but that's sort of like the maximum you really want to do it. You don't really want to run for 3 hours very often. So Whereas you can go for a ride and do all that and works a different energy system that you really can't train that way doing any other activity. So I think that's how that sort of comes about.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Tom Pidcock earlier. I thought it was really interesting. Well, I guess actually first you took a break from cycling in 2015. What brought that about?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I guess it's funny because I was basically in not a similar role, but as far as the team goes, the same sort of role. You're a domestique, you're kind of the dog's body, the dish pig, which at the time when I joined the World Tour, that was quite an honor because I did it for Peter Sagan at that point, when we sort of basically turned professional together and raced a bunch with him. And that was awesome. But, I got to close to 30 and I was like, I don't know if I really want to spend my most productive years of my life doing this. And I'd always wanted to work in finance because that's what I did at university. So
interesting.
I decided to move to the US and sort of pursue a career there. And, I basically had about 18 months sort of doing that. And at the same time, just, it's pretty hard to just go cold turkey on sport. I've done a bunch of different things, bike related, some gravel races, a bit of mountain biking.
Yeah.
Mikey Day, actually, I'd spent a lot of time with him out there.
Did you ride BMX or how did that come about?
Oh, I was, I was living out in Calabasas with a mate of mine.
First, and then how that connection happened.
Yeah, well, Mike Day, he was silver medalist at the Olympics, I think, Beijing on the BMX. And then he did some enduro, and then he sort of wanted to do downhill. So that was actually that time. He was actually starting to ride the road bike and trying to get some fitness and all of that. And he was just finding it so incredibly challenging. And I was like, God, how can you be so good at that? But then when he would tell me more about his training for the bit, I was blown away. Like 300 RPM, 2,000 watts.
Crazy.
Like the specificity of that horsepower that he would generate was just mind-boggling. And so you could understand how his body was just so tuned to that.
It was so interesting for me because he actually lives like right down the street from me.
Way.
Yeah, and we would ride bikes together. We used to go and ride this Nosco ride near me on road bikes, but he was telling me some stories and he was like, if I went into the gym and I couldn't put up these numbers, I would just go home for the day. I wouldn't even ride because it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was living out in Calabasas. So that was 15, 16. I moved into Santa Monica after that. But we every Saturday afternoon we go mountain biking, like a big group of Dave Zabriskie and, Robbie Schaefer, the guy who owns Peddler's Fork out there, kind of the hub, I guess, of cycling, the heart and soul of LA cycling.
Yeah.
Thursday nights we had ride and pint on the enduro bikes and, put the light on and go out and do some night riding. So, I was always on bikes and different things, keeping active, but I did a couple of triathlons and I'd always wanted to do Hawaii. I always just wanted to go as an age group. I just followed the sport as a kid and really admired the Australians that had been successful there. And I hadn't actually done any triathlons, but I thought, why not give it a go now? Because I got the time and I knew I'd be able to get through the bike league and I could swim okay. And I actually qualified for it, but then I did a race in Whistler, Canada. And then the next weekend, another mate of mine, you probably know, Mark Weir, he invited me to begging me to go to this Downieville mountain bike classic, mountain bike thing.
You've done
and I went up there with him.
Every single cycling discipline,
Oh yeah.
Wait, this is too much.
Yeah, Mike took me down so Mark took me down a run at his house one day. Called Suicide. No, Widowmaker, he called it.
Suicide is literally in my backyard.
He sent me down
my backyard.
Yeah, he sent me down this thing, and next thing I went over, the bike came down, and I went, and there's like a chain ring just like come through my chin, like just the teeth. And every time I went to his house, something happened to me. Like I just got nuked. But he's great, mate. I actually saw him just after Kona last year in October. I went to stay with him, and he hasn't changed. He never will. But anyway, so he had me in Downieville, and I went up there, and we were just watching, like supporting the guys and watching the event, and he took me down a downhill run, and I don't know what made me think I wouldn't put on I'd always wear flats like shoes, and just so when I did crash, I could sort of eject. And for whatever reason, this particular day, I just went on sand shoes, like thinking we were just going up to watch it and we are just going to sort of slide down. But of course, I should have known better with Mark. It's never just like a little slide down. And yeah, I jagged my foot on a I caught a tree stump and sort of pulled me back. I snapped a couple of metatarsals.
Oh,
so that sort of ruined the whole Kona thing.
Right.
In that the next 8 weeks to Kona, I was going to be in a plaster cast. So, but of course, being me and thinking, well, I just want to go and do it one day, even if I have to walk, I still went with a broken foot. Like I just got it off the day that I flew over. And, yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy because the age groupers start behind all the pros. So I still swam okay because just naturally you can swim. And I was still obviously could ride okay. And, you sort of, get away from all the age groupers and you start catching all the pro women. And I almost caught, like Daniela Reef was leading and I almost caught her. And we were just getting past the airport close to town. And then she started pulling away from me and I'm like, oh, so hiding behind my dry bars. And then sort of just shuffled through the run. But obviously being there, it's kind of lit a bit of a fuse, wow, this is pretty cool. But I never really thought about taking it seriously. But then when I went back to LA and just the guys, Mike, being like, God, you should really give that sport a real go. Like, you're still old enough to be able to do it. And Mike at the time was trying to transition to another sport. He's like, I don't want to stop doing it. Mate, it's the best job in the world.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, and I kind of ummed and ahmed for another 6 months and into the next year. And then, about 12 months really. And then, just sort of a culmination of things, being back in Australia and Chris Froome being in Australia and my old rowing coach being Chris's coach and, George used to work with. I ended up training with Chris randomly, and then all of a sudden I ended up back involved with the team. And,
no way.
There was obviously a lot of success. There's a lot of success in that period. And, I developed into, a decent triathlete. And, it was pretty incredible. Now we've got people like Tom there,
That is what a story. Like, I mean, you literally, stopped, and then it seems like you tried out like every single different cycling discipline. We had Payson McElveen on the podcast
just
earlier.
For fun, because I'd never done it,
for sure.
I'd just not ridden mountain bikes already. I was interested.
Yeah.
Oh, Payson, we've ridden with him out there when he's there in the winter as well.
Yeah, because you did Unbound, right?
Yeah, I did that last year. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the team sent me to that. God, that was a long day.
Yeah.
That's you saying it as well.
If you say it's a long day,
way.
it's a 200-mile gravel race. And
Is that what it is?
I went out there too just to check it out this year, and I've never seen so many gnarly people just crack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it's patience, and you get to a point, I guess for me, I kind of thought it was all this fun thing, but then you rock up there and you realize it's not fun. It's like the world championships of these guys. It's like, okay, fine, we can have a race.
Great way to put it.
So you start with that mentality, you're trying to drop everyone, but then I got a flat tire and I was trying to like wave people down to give me a hand. Then I realized, oh, that's right, it's a race. So, and I had no idea how to fix it. I hadn't thought about that. So, I ended up on the side of the road for an hour trying to figure out how to, pull off a tubeless tire and stick a tube in there and then stuff everywhere. And, anyway, and then it was an experience that was just in the end became an exercise of getting to the finish for me. I wasn't competing. And it was crazy muddy that year, so you were walking through stuff and it was a bit of an adventure, and as sort of things kept going wrong, I was like, well, whatever happens, if I have to, I know I can run at least half of this distance. So I'm getting to the finish.
Wait, so speaking about running and cycling at the same time, so you raced Paris-Roubaix, which is super gnarly, and then you went and ran a marathon after?
No, just a half marathon.
I
would have run a marathon, but I had more daylight.
Corrected.
Okay.
Sorry, how bad.
Yeah.
Did you really or not?
Yeah.
Did you really do that?
No, I definitely did that, yeah. And there was a big crash in the Arenberg Forest and we were behind it. And so the front of the race is sort of gone. And our main guy, Filippo Garner, was up there anyway. So it's not like you're going to catch up. They're gone. So you're not really racing after that point anyway. So you're all kind of riding to the finish. You kind of find a group of guys you want to chat with and, suffer with. It's still hard to get to the finish. It's not easy just to finish that race, especially inside the time cut.
And how long was Paris-Roubaix that day, just to clarify before you went for your little half marathon run?
270 kilometers. Yeah.
You are not wired up, right, my friend? No one does that. I can't believe it. Right, go off the bike. Tell you what, I might run back to the hotel. Well, it hasn't been hard enough today. Is that what it was a bit? You didn't feel satisfied, but the Roubaix hadn't delivered enough pain or something?
I just thought about what the sport that I'm faced with, Ironman. At that point I was, I had races coming up to qualify for this World Championship, and I guess with the racing, you kind of do lose your routine a bit and lose your opportunities to do the key sessions sometimes with all the travel and whatever. And so I just thought, well, this is a great idea to do a run, on really tired legs, which is kind of what you face, what you face in an Ironman. Yeah.
You are committed. You are.
And so, Cam, I one of the things I've always thought is really interesting. We also talked with Luke Rowe, and what is that role like, playing the domestique role? Like you mentioned, kind of coming in with Peter Sagan, and now you're doing this sport that is like almost completely individual. So why did you want to be a domestique in the first place? And I don't know, like that, it just seems like such a big shift.
Yeah, I guess in the first place, it was a way into the sport. Sure. You kind of start that way. I mean, obviously now you get these feet, like Tom comes in and he's, team leader and he can deliver. And same with all these other young phenoms we have. I mean, but that back in those days it didn't happen, and it was more probably a hierarchical thing, it was like a respect thing. Like you got to earn your stripes. So even if you could do that, thinking back, we probably had plenty of guys that were capable of doing that. Sagan was one of the few that would buck the trend. He came in and was instantly dominant. But yeah, so that's how you cut your teeth. And then some are good enough to evolve and, grow out of that. I mean, Richie Port and I kind of turned professional at the same time. And, we sort of traded places at the national championships leading in. So you could say we're at the sort of same level. But, Richie was able to establish himself as a team leader, whereas I never got out of being the dish pig. I just obviously didn't have what he had as far as the ability in the sport, especially once we hit the world tour. And so that was sort of fine. But like I said, I enjoyed it. But then when I realized I wasn't capable of getting myself out of that, I was like, well, okay, this has been great, but this isn't what I really wanted to be defining my sporting life by, especially after having come from rowing where I had some success, being in the Olympics, etc. So, and then, I was just going to get a job. And then obviously I ended up in triathlon. And so I focused solely on that as I, got better and better. And then there was the opportunity to rejoin the team, which, I'm sure the George has sort of talked about. And now I'm back doing the same role. But, I think even 14th yesterday, I can still say that I'm one of the better triathletes in the world. Yeah. I generally perform. I'm generally on the podium or winning, the other races. And,
Cam, you're pretty good.
And obviously at the highest level, I'm still a factor, in the sport. So I have my opportunity myself. That's the sport I'm good at. And I can also do a good job helping the guys. And I love seeing them succeed. And I think I do, probably ego-wise, I do happily do that now and enjoy it because I get to go and have the time for me when I go and do an Ironman where it is all on me. Be it good or bad, that's great when you win or do well. But then, like yesterday, when things don't go well, it's a real hard one because you just feel horrible about how many people you let down. I can imagine in downhill, like if you've stuffed up something, you've rolled a tire, missed a corner, fucking burped a tire or whatever, broken your suspension and stuffed everything, you think immediately about that whole pit crew down there that have worked night and day. You're a bit dirty on yourself. But for me, I can handle failure because it's happened plenty of times. Yeah. Luckily I've had some success too. But having to look those people in the eye, that's the hardest part for me. And sort of say, God, I really am sorry. And so yeah, I get to experience that side of it on my own in Ironman, and obviously with the team, I'm happy to hide behind people like Tom and just be the dish pig.
Right.
So right now, I can't quite get my head around it. You are a member of the INEOS Grenadiers, a full-blown professional cyclist who just happens to be one of the top triathlons and manages to fit that in and all the training it required at the same. Is that right? Is that actually what's happening here? You ride for the INEOS Grenadiers, but you just bob off and do the odd Ironman here and there. That I just can't. I
Pretty
have no
much,
idea
yeah.
how you can do all that.
Yeah.
I mean, running and
Well,
swimming.
I think, yeah, I mean, the team's really good. And obviously with the Worlds, they've tried to give me, as much freedom as possible to prepare as well as I could for yesterday. So, yeah, so during the early part of the year, it's like with the classics, for example, I'm in and out of Belgium and, other stage races early in the year, I try and fit in what I can. And when I first came to the team, with George there, I mean, my first race was in Australia, the Cadell Evans race. And I'd just come off the back of 5th in Kona. I'd won a couple of Ironmans that year, and I was really on that nice trajectory. This is the beginning of 2020, just before COVID hit. And I did the race, and we had a great race that day. It was funny. Luke Rowe, incidentally, he's like, first, after 3K, we turn left, and it's crosswinds. And we're just going to whack it at this 200K stage. Cam, you lead us in.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I hadn't raced in 6 years. I had not done a race in 6 years. And here I am, like first race, first corner, and I'm putting it in the gutter, trying to shell everyone out of the back. And so we go around this corner, put it in the gutter, shell it, sure enough, I'd almost forgotten which side of the road to go on, so I just had to guess. Luckily, I got it right. And we split the race into a million pieces. And it was funny because there was a bit of commentary about me coming back in the way I did. No one takes 6 years away from the sport and just waltzes back in with the best team in the world at the time. And so, but after that, everyone came up to me. One of my teammates now, actually, Eliot, who was at the time riding for Cofidis, and he's like, you haven't raced in 6 years. I was in the third group. So
You're ruining the sport.
It just sort of killed. Yeah, exactly. It just kind of killed all of that. And I was just welcome back. It was like, okay, this isn't going to be a novelty. There's nothing that's, he's more than capable of being here. Nothing's changed. And then, and then obviously we had the race and we got through the race. We had a great race. We had a guy that came second, guy that came fifth. And then afterwards, I just sort of put in the hotel and it was 21K back. I thought, oh, great. Well, Tim Garrison, actually the coach, and said, you can run back to the hotel afterwards. So off I went to run back. The team's letting me race at this level, splitting it in the, doing this. And now I'm running. This is just a dream come true.
Yeah.
And that day I remember I'm getting lost and I actually ran 30K back to the hotel. So it was just like amazing. Yeah. And
did you get some funny looks? You took your cycling shoes off and stuck a pair of trainers on and just casually ran out the end of Paris-Roubaix. I mean.
Yeah, no, it was pretty funny because like at that race particularly, all the teams, most of the guys ride back because it's 20K. And a lot of them would pass, but they didn't like go, oh, yeah, your hero. They all smiled and laughed. Like good on you. Like it was quite respectful. So that was a really cool entry back into the sport.
Right. Yeah.
But then obviously COVID hit, and that kind of just changed everything. It just made obviously there was no triathlon for a year, and then even 21, 22, it was quite hard to do it that way because you weren't allowed to leave the bubble. So I couldn't go to pools during races, it became much more difficult to manage. But then this year, finally, we've started to get back to sort of what the objective was, and the way of it, me being able to fill in, when the team needs me and when they need a rider. And so I'm basically the last guy. I'm number 30. And when they need a guy, like sort of last minute, they call me. Because in theory, that shouldn't happen too much. You got a bunch of riders and they should be all stuck to their plans pretty much. And it's really more the bigger races. That's why I ended up at Roubaix, because the World Tour races, it's a significant fine from the UCI if you don't have a full team. So that's sort of where I help sort of save money, in essence, for the team. And not only that, but I'm sort of at a level where I'm capable of coming and contributing, obviously. Right. So it's not like they couldn't put anyone in that spot. They could hire any old person just to go and start, and then they just don't finish, and it doesn't matter. But I guess I actually can offer a bit to the team as well. And so that's sort of how the role works. And this year's sort of been much better. It has just been that I've really only done big races, big stage races. And I was just gonna, long way to get to it. But I did race 2 weeks ago in Belgium, the old Benelux tour. It's called the Renewy Tour now, so it's a 1 week World Tour stage race. And I did the Hamburg Classic just before that, a World Tour 1 day race. So. Yeah, so that helped. That gave me some good legs for yesterday, on the bike at least. So I definitely do compete in both sports simultaneously.
What does trading look like for you then? What does your week look like? Is it dominated then by cycling, or is it dominated by like perhaps the weaker disciplines for you by the running and the swimming? And do you still take Sundays off?
Everything kind of revolves around running. I mean, that's the big one, and that's the always what's going to be, ride for show, run for dough. And
is that right?
And I guess that's sort of that's what you build the whole structure around. I mean, you can bust everything to make a minute or two on the bike, but you can lose like yesterday when something goes wrong. Okay, that was a little bit unforeseen. It never happened to me before. And, now I know it's possible. I'll figure out what you can do to prevent it, nausea or whatever. And you could lose 20 minutes, off what you think, 15 minutes, like a huge amount. Because if you start walking compared to running, the difference in the speed.
Yeah, that's right. You can't roll. You can't roll, can you?
Can't roll. Yeah.
So most of the top triathlons, the top very best in the world, the ones above you, the few above you, you say, do they come from running background then? Is that the best kind of base to have or not?
Yeah, well, a lot of them have just grown up being triathletes. The best is really to be a good swimmer and runner. It's pretty easy to learn how to ride a bike. If you can't be a good swimmer, you want to be decent enough and then really good on the bike, because like I've sort of alluded to, especially now, otherwise you never get to the front of the race. You don't know what happens. So, but if you're a great swimmer, you're kind of at least there, you can feel it. Even if you get dropped, at least you kind of see it happen and you know what happens and you know how to improve. But if you can't swim, you're starting on the back foot big time, particularly this day and age. So luckily, I'm sort of okay and strong enough on the bike to get myself into the race. So I've been able to learn the sport, I think, relatively quickly and sort of start competing at a pretty high level relatively quickly. As I said, my whole career, I've kind of been, around where yesterday's performance was at worst,
Right.
So yeah, that's sort of the dynamic of the sport.
And so you've been at the top of both of these disciplines, the cycling and the triathletes and the Ironman.
And rowing.
Yeah, and rowing.
Don't forget that.
Have you ever wanted to race the Tour de France?
Yeah, I'd love to. But when I was at Liquigas, I did the Giro a couple of times, and I guess that was kind of the priority, being an Italian team. And that was my big regret when I stopped. I never really asked or even sort of tried to focus on doing the Tour because I just didn't think about it at the time. It was just, it was quite an honor to do the Giro in an Italian team. You think, I'll do that one day.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I never did it. And then now you come back to this team and, I mean, we've got 16 winners of the Tour on the roster. So it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to make the team. And also, it's not really my role. I mean, I'm not, I'm never part of the stream that's targeting the Tour. I was in Copenhagen last year because they were doing COVID tests. That if something happened, I would have gone in. I was like the last minute guy. I was there. Yeah. But and in 2020, I did the Vuelta with the team because there was a crazy scheduling. It actually overlapped with the Giro, and so to fill the team, and we had a great Vuelta. We ended up our guy Richard Carapaz was second to Roglic. He only lost by 20 seconds, but he had the jersey, then Roglic got it back, then he got it back, then Roglic got it back. It was tit for tat.
Right.
It was an awesome race, and I was right in amongst it. It was probably one of the best races I've done with the team. But yeah, I mean, I guess it was great that I did that. There's obviously other riders that are at the team specifically, there to help the team win the Tour. So I'm not really considered for that in this team, unfortunately. But you never know. I mean, with me, you never know. I never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
right.
something might change next year, and who knows? I might be on the start line.
Your ability is just to be able to shape yourself into different sports.
Right.
I've never heard anything like it. Sat here, I'm going, who is this bloke? Like, it's just mad, really, the way you can spread yourself and have, I don't know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I just can't get my head around it.
I mean, maybe off the back of that, like, what do you feel like does make what is it that separates a good athlete from a great athlete? Because you've been at the highest level in so many different sports, and even the things you dabble in, like going to Unbound and riding mountain bikes and things like that.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think yesterday, even more so, I probably got a bit complacent with this sport because of the trajectory I was on, and thought, I could waltz back into cycling, do that as well, and keep going, but the sport has sort of also gone like this at the time that I've kind of taken the foot off the focus a bit. And missing that swim pack, although I had actually improved my swim compared to last year, I got dropped pretty much straight away last year and was never in the race in Kona. I worked really hard on it. But maybe spreading myself a bit too thin is a difference between, making that and being able to actually make sure you have that phenomenal performance, like that great performance we talk about here. Because if I'd been able to make that group, I would have been with that other guy on the bike, and it would have completely changed the dynamic of the entire day. Ideally, I wouldn't have had that issue on the run. Who knows? But it's a bit like when you get in the lead, it's such a different race, especially when 9 out of 10 races that I go to, and even Kona a couple of years where I am leading the thing. I'm used to that. I'm used to being in front and then having to fight. But I think the biggest thing I've noticed with people like, Frumi or Tom, Geraint, the guys I've been closest to is, they're, and also, I work with Nike and the running work they do. It's the same group as Kipchoge's group. So I kind of know what he's up to. Is the specificity of what they do to their task, of what they have to execute. I've said it before in some podcasts, but if you haven't done it in training, you won't do it in a race. That's a bit of a broad term in that, of course, there's some specificities to that you just sort of can't do. But in reality, the stuff that Tom talks about with the testing, with the suspension and the tires and blah, 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 I'm just like, what? That stuff is just way beyond me. Right. I just think, I'll just do a heap of exercise and I'll go and race and everything will be fine. But then, now that my sport has sort of evolved from that psyche, and guys are actually a bit scientific now, and cooling's the thing, and the aero stuff's the thing, I'm all of a sudden a bit on the back foot because I haven't dedicated the time to all those little bits and pieces to make, that corner yesterday that I just freaking smacked into, that should never have happened. I thought I knew the descent pretty well, but I knew I didn't know it perfectly. And that's just down to me not dedicating the time to a specific task. But because I've got so much other stuff going on, I also kind of don't have the time. And that I think kind of
do you feel
sort
like
of
you
holding me
could
back a bit from maybe being one of the greats.
Do you feel like you could actually be specific? Your personality, on one hand, you're not necessarily focused on it, but on the other hand, it seems like it's almost what makes you tick.
Yeah, that's what scares me, because I worry that if I did all of a sudden specify, be incredibly specific on something, that maybe I'd stuff that up. And then, so I guess it's kind of like a safety net, sort of just doing everything pretty well. But I definitely feel like maybe I need to learn, and this is probably important for going forward in life. I think no matter what I do, obviously I'd like to evolve into the finance world at some point. Unfortunately, all those contacts I made in the place where I found a job, there's all those opportunities still there for me. But I definitely need to compartmentalize, periodize, maybe doing things properly at certain times. I think back to my preparation for this race. And while last week I thought I'd done everything I could, or that I wanted to do, that I thought was right, I can look back and go, you know what? I got that wrong. I got that wrong. I got that wrong. I really should have gone to the team much earlier with that request. I should have spoken to Pinarello earlier about this. I should have actually tested the two bikes we were talking about instead of, sort of assuming that I knew the answer. Tires was another, there's certainly a bunch of things that I've now written down and gone, you know what, I need to dedicate more time. If you genuinely want to try and win something like this, no different to any world title in anything, the backgrounds you guys have got. But it's, you've got to do all those bits, because someone's going to do it.
Right.
Someone else is going to definitely do them. And they're going to be ready. And it's more likely that more than one person is going to do all those bits. Otherwise, you resign yourself to being okay. Pardon?
I say, do you think you'll be able to win one of these Ironmen then? Do you think it's obviously on your radar, but you think you can do it? Because like you say, you're going to have to really specify and really concentrate on some things leading into it.
Yeah, no, I genuinely do. And yesterday, obviously I've won other, Ironmans, like regional ones, over the years, different countries. But as far as Kona goes, or the World Championship, I genuinely do. Otherwise, I'd happily go off and do something else. There's certainly a lot of other great things I could do that excite me.
Probably wouldn't be cricket.
I don't want to. Yeah, but I genuinely believe that if I do just knuckle down and over the next, it's 13 months next year, to be back in Hawaii in October, especially after the experience I had this year where I was so close to holding that swim route, which I knew would have changed so much. And then even on the bike, at times I was sort of close to clawing my way back, to the front couple of guys, and it just stayed there. Then I crashed and then sort of came back. And then obviously the run worked out the way it did. There was enough there to say, no, look, I'm still there. I'm still one of the few guys that can actually genuinely believe I started honestly believing I could win. Otherwise, I wouldn't have raced the way I did.
Yeah.
I obviously went way above myself to survive as long as I could in the swim. I could have easily just sat back and swam with another group and swam comfortably and then had a good bike ride and then had a solid run. But I knew if I wanted to win the thing, I had to try and be there.
Yeah.
And there's enough of that there that just motivates the hell out of me to do things better and come back and have another crack at it in, 13 months' time.
And so is that your goal? I thought it was so interesting, reading that you had set these two really specific goals in 21 about being on the team and also about winning, and you kind of met both of those. You have that now, like for 23 or even 24?
Yeah, well, every year since, my goal was to win a race and, win an Ironman in the same year. The last 2 years, I've been a part of some wins with the team, but I've been second in a couple of Ironmans. I haven't won a race, but and I've won more significant races or been part of more significant wins with the team than I was, say, in 21. But I haven't been able to win an Ironman. So this year, the rest of this year, there's still a few opportunities. There's a couple of races in the US. There's one in Mexico that I can do. So in November. So I'm going to knuckle down and see if I can finish the year on a high and tick both of those. But obviously, if I could ever have like the dream, like the absolute dream scenario in sport, it would be to be part of a winning Tour de France team and then win Kona. That would be, to me, that would be just the most incredible thing ever. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard like a more lofty goal, but also one if you're like, Cam was on the winning team, in the Tour, and he also won Kona. I'd be like, I guess makes sense.
Yeah, the scary thing is that we know that you could actually do it. That's almost the maddest bit about it. That is, yeah. And there can't be anyone else on Earth that can do that, right? Not at the moment.
No, not really, no. And,
just casual.
Yeah.
No, it's insane. It is. I've never heard it. I haven't heard it.
Yeah. But all or nothing, it's like a lot of guys have won Kona, a lot of guys have been on winning teams in the Tour de France, a lot of guys have won the Tour de France. So why not distinguish yourself somehow?
Yeah.
Out of the cycling, the rowing, and the triathlon, is there a favourite? Is there one? It feels to me like you can get your teeth stuck more into a triathlon because it goes on longer and you clearly enjoy pain. That's how it seems.
Yeah, I definitely, obviously I appreciate everything I learned from rowing because that gave me the foundation to do everything else I've done. The camaraderie, the teamwork, suffering. It's a painful sport as far as fatigue goes. But a skill-based sport, I think one of the most important things that anyone can learn, and we teach our kids, is to learn. Just to learn a skill, and then you can apply that to basically anything. But I love triathlon. I love exercising, and then the sport of triathlon really rewards that. You just have to do a lot of it, and that'll get you so far. Obviously, now I've learned I've got to do a few little bits and pieces, some smaller details, and get them right as well. But I genuinely love the challenge. Every time I get in the pool, I don't get in the pool and just swim for the sake of it because I have to swim 3K today or 5K or 6, whatever it is. Or go for a run, even if it's, 30K or 40K or, a track session. Every time I'm genuinely trying to get better because, and every day I do feel like I can get better because I feel like I'm still relatively new to that. I guess cycling is a bit more one-dimensional and a bit more social. I've always generally got the guys in Andorra to train with, and that's awesome. Bit of a switch-off sort of time, but I love the challenge of, trying to be better at something I'm not good at, and so triathlon really gives me everything I want out of a sport. That's for sure.
Cool.
Well, Cam, this has been so cool. I
definitely has.
Actually didn't know that athletes as I don't even know, as accomplished, as mentally tough existed. It's super cool to get to know you, and really, really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, definitely. It was eye-opening to listen to.
Well, I've actually got a favour to ask you guys. So, Ironman now they've announced, and I'm guessing though they might stick to their word, but they split the men and the women. So when I say Kona's 13 months away, so we raced yesterday here, our World Championship. The women race next month in Hawaii, like normal, and then next year they're doing a switch. So in theory, in 25, we'll be back here in Nice. So before that, I want to do a couple of lessons with you guys about going downhill, so that I can turn that into
as you said, you hang out with Tom all the time. You're on the same team. I was going to ask you, if we're going to see you at a Mountain Bike World Cup. Yeah. You've got the fitness. Sounds like you've got the skills. Seems like another sport you might want to tick off.
I'll be there with the pom-poms. Yeah.
No,
I'll be
you
cheering
should be on the track.
You'll be on the track. I can see it now.
I'm super
We have
down.
talked about Cape Epic.
Here we go. Gateway, he's coming.
I love it. I would love to whenever you're in California.
But then I said to him, then I said to him, what if I might do the co-ed thing with Pauline? That might be more, even though she'd still drop my backside, but maybe I can keep up a bit better.
I know. I saw. I guess you guys do ride a little bit, as you guys are teammates. I saw she commented on your post about the Worlds.
Yeah. No, she's been in Andorra quite a bit, so. And obviously I get on well with Dylan. I was there with him when he won Roubaix the year before. So, she's great. She's great to have around. We have joked about doing some events. So, okay, it's true. I can't say I won't ever do a mountain bike event because you just never know.
Exclusive. We've got it. World Cup. Watch out. He's coming.
Oh, I love it. I actually,
Yeah, well, I think you'll beat it.
I believe it too.
I'm waiting now.
Yeah, totally.
Expectantly for you to turn up at a mountain bike World Cup. I am.
Thank you so much, Cam. This has been great. And whenever they, especially in Andorra, we gotta, all three of us, we gotta go for a ride.
Yeah, we will.
Next
That's
year.
it. It's a date.
That sounds good.
Downhill only. Downhill only.
I want a shuttle to the top.
Yeah, God. Oh, God. Yeah, well, hey, if I can survive Mark Williams' place, honestly, I think I can take on anything. He's definitely tried to hurt me and has successfully done so, but I've always bounced back and come back for more. So, yeah, it's a date.
Well, we'll see you soon. And, good luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks very much, Cam.
Beauty. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.